Can Islam be modern? The short answer is yes, but it's worth looking into this question more deeply because the accusation is often made that Muslims, and indeed all religious people, live in some kind of pre-modern, anti-rational world. And it just isn't true. Apart from pure bigotry, the claims that Islam and religion more generally isn't rational, isn't modern, have two sources. The first is the confusion between being scientific and being rational. For a field of knowledge to be scientific, it must propose rational theories that can be objectively tested. No religion is scientific because all religions deal in the realm of that which cannot be tested. God, or that which is transcendent precisely because God transcends the human ability to know through observation and testing. That's what makes God, God. But just because a field of knowledge isn't scientific doesn't mean it doesn't know real things. Much, perhaps most of modern cosmology, using perfectly rational mathematical theories, speculates on things that cannot be tested, like the multiverse. And those things are not, strictly speaking, scientific. The work of Marcelo Gleisner is useful in this respect. We could also think of almost any kind of knowledge associated with literature, music, theater, the plastic arts, and philosophy. No one has done a double-blind test on Aristotle's theory of drama, but it remains the basis on which virtually every dramatic work is composed. And I can refer you to Shonda Rhimes or Aaron Sorkin to name two well-known screenwriters who refer directly to Aristotle. But just because it isn't scientific doesn't mean that religion isn't rational, or for that matter, modern. Now, the second reason that Islam and other religions are thought to be irrational and anti-modern is that in their pre-modern form, they advanced beliefs and ideas that can both be tested and which fail a modern test. The problem here is anachronism, asking the past to conform to present expectations and knowledge. That is a test that the past can only fail. And if that is the only test, then we isolate ourselves in the island of the present, our past dismissed as irrelevant, and our future unknown and unknowable. And by the way, not just the religious past. Now, let's look at Islam and rationality. First, we can note that very early on, Muslim thinkers learned about and learned from the Greek tradition of rational philosophy. In fact, the work for this intellectual tradition in Arabic is falsafa, from the Greek word philosophy. By the 3rd century, or the 11th century of the Common Era, you could hardly find more tightly argued rationality than the philosophical debates that emerged between Christians, Jews, and Muslims in medieval Spain. At the same time, Muslim interpreters of the Quran also developed a rich tradition of what we now call literary analysis. They were deeply concerned about and analyzed in depth everything from the use of specific terms in the Quran to its grammatical constructions, to its use of metaphors and analogy. Every trained Muslim commentator knew and understood the difference between literary forms and their meaning and purpose. These same interpreters also developed a robust historical criticism. They sought to rationally discover the historical and social location of every part of the Quran. And then they sought to discover the historical and social location and veracity of every tradition of the Prophet Muhammad. Muslim scholars might disagree with one another on the interpretation of a particular surah or ayat, but none of their arguments were irrational. And finally, early Islam developed a robust theology of natural revelation. The Quran itself says that humans should learn about nature and about God through the study of nature. There is a long list of scientific discoveries and concepts from the natural world made first by Muslim scholars and then transmitted later to Christian land. One thinks of algebra, the development of the astrolabe, distilling alcohol and other aromatics, the algorithm, and of course, what we still call Arabic numerals. Find a word in science that begins with AL, and you've almost certainly found an Islamic origin. So early Islam was rational in its approach to understanding God and in its approach to understanding the national world. Now, let's be honest. Despite these rationalist traditions, Islam, like other religions, found that the advent of modernity posed enormous challenges. Like Christians, Jews, Buddhists, Hindus, Sikhs, and indeed all pre-modern people, Muslims were forced to reevaluate their understandings of the natural and social worlds. Naturally, there was resistance, as there was and remains in Christianity and Judaism. Part of that resistance was political. Old centers of power resist modern forms of governance, particularly when they are advocated by colonizing powers. Part of the resistance was resistance to the modern idea that humans can live without God, which is surely something that no religious person can accept as natural. Still, for Muslims, the threefold tradition of rational philosophical reflection, literary criticism, and natural theology has borne fruit in modern times. In the Islamic world, there were 19th century pioneers already promoting a modern education and a modern worldview and building modern universities. The great philosophical debates of the medieval period were revisited and revised, and natural philosophy burgeoned into natural science. And look at the result. Here in North Dallas, where I live, one doesn't have to go far to find Muslim doctors, physicists, engineers, biologists, and other modern scientists. Many received their initial education in fully modern universities in the Muslim world. These folks are certainly and absolutely modern and rational. Our lives depend on it. Yet they also believe that the Quran is God's revelation to humankind. They simply make a distinction between that which can be scientifically tested and that which can be rationally known but never tested. It is a distinction found in all modern religion. And let's be honest, this distinction does cause a crisis of authority for many Muslims. What, if not science, authorizes those rational but not scientific Muslim beliefs? It is a question faced by every single religious person, and I'm going to take it up in the next short video. In the meantime, look for my new podcast, Interfaith Encounters. It will drop in mid-April with weekly episodes. I'll be interviewing first different religious leaders about how they respond to the COVID-19 pandemic and how it's affected their communities. And let me ask you to keep watching this YouTube channel for more about Islam from a Christian perspective. Thanks.